I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and this is the third video of the series on Peirce's Metaphysics. And this is on his second paper called the Doctrine of Necessity Examined, published in 1892, where he attacks the common presupposition of necessitarianism, also known as determinism, to answer the question: is every single fact in the universe precisely determined by law? He begins with a historical overview. Peirce traces this line of thought back to the pre-Socratics, Democritus specifically, who came up with the idea that all matter is made of atoms. By atoms, Democritus means the smallest thing which can no longer be subdivided further, which is not quite atoms as we know it today, since we have managed to look inside the atom to find electrons and a nucleus and also to split it. Democritus was thinking about matter when he reasoned that all must be governed by mechanical laws, but made the mistake of extending that principle to be the sole principle of action in the universe, hence making all that exists matter. Epicurus revised the atomic theory, introducing the idea that atoms can swerve by chance, and according to Peirce, gave the atomic theory life. Aristotle rejects Democritus's mechanical view, postulating that events happen in three ways. 1. External compulsion, which is in his terminology an efficient cause. 2. Through its own nature or final cause. And 3. By chance. Hence Epicurus's and Aristotle's metaphysical theories admit free will, while Democritus and later the Stoics were materialists and hence determinists. Fast forward to modern times, Isaac Newton's systemization of natural phenomena with his laws of mechanics reinforced the hope that mechanical principles might suffice to explain the universe. This hope for mechanism to be able to explain everything persists up to our present time, despite there being no logical justification to do so. Just like with Democritus, if one was only considering matter, the mechanical principles describe its behavior well. But why that should be the case extended to all else is unjustified unless everything is only matter or is reducible to material phenomena, which is the materialist view. This includes thoughts, feelings, and motives, which arise due to prior material causes, according to Thomas Hobbes. Given that everything is mechanical cause and effect, all past, present, and future effects are in theory calculable if a previous state was known. This view most popularly associated with Pierre-Simon Laplace and is known as Laplace's demon in the literature. Such a view conflicts with free will. If we continue to insist that free will exists in a completely material world, it then makes free will a miracle, which also is unjustifiable. However, such a materialistic worldview is merely a presupposition, a postulate that still needs to be proven. To postulate a proposition is no more than to hope it is true, adds Peirce, a pragmatist, but contra the usual pragmatist view on how the truth is simply what works. Just because it is convenient to make such a presupposition does not make it true. Peirce asserts that even if free will is granted, it need not upset the laws of science. Contrary to the common view that scientific theories are the truth, how science really operates is to consider all its theories fallible, with a continuous contestation between theories, with the best theory one that describes phenomena better, making whatever theory is the prevalent one merely provisional, awaiting the next better theory. Hence, theories only tell us what is probable or approximately true. Deduction can only tell us what is already contained in its premises, while if we want to go beyond definitions, we have to employ non-deductive inferences that give us additional information, amplifying beyond what we can know from the premises. According to Peirce, there are only three kinds of ampliative inferences: induction, hypothesis, and analogy. All of these modes are essentially inferences from sampling. He gives an analogy. Say we want to know the types of wheat and their proportion on a ship. We take a sample from each of the storage places, which may give a good approximation, but if there should be any area that was not sampled, for instance a secret hole, then we will not have what truly is the distribution of the type of wheat on board the ship. To really get at the true distribution, we have to be able not just to sample but to examine all of the wheat. We have to extend our experience indefinitely, short of which all we know is merely provisional. No postulates will then be required. A postulate is the formulation of a material fact which we are not entitled to assume as a premise, but the truth of which is requisite to the validity of an inference, explains Peirce. A postulate can be verified empirically through experiencing it. If it is experienced, then there is no need to postulate it. If it does not, then it is provisional, making it a possibility but one that is not confirmed yet. Every postulate is cut off, either by the provisionality or by the experientiality of our inference, adds Peirce. The principle of universal necessity as a postulate remains provisional since we have not yet experienced all experiences. Could we verify it through observation? Peirce does not think so since we are unable to make exact measurements without errors. Firstly, even just measuring anything, say a line, there is inexactitude. Secondly, even if no line is observed, we are unable to be sure that the line is non-existent, since all we know is that the length of the line, if it exists, is less than the smallest length that is visible to us, be it with our bare eyes or even with a microscope. Hence, direct observation is unable to, in principle, prove that there is no line. Indirect observation, however, can do so, since we may have observed that the person drawing the line did not come near the paper on which the line was supposed to be drawn. In that case, we know that there was no line, and hence the length of that line is strictly zero. Generalizing, if we fail to observe something, we cannot be sure that it does not exist, rather than that we are unable to detect it. Hence, with regards to chance being present in natural processes, we can argue firstly that we in fact have uncertainty when making any measurements, which may be errors of observation or is indicative of the element of chance. Secondly, even if we attribute the uncertainty to errors of observation, we still cannot know that there was no chance involved, but can only abstain from deciding since it may be a case where we simply have been unable to detect it. While we may observe regularity in nature, this has no bearing on whether such regularity is exact or universal. In fact, our observations tell us that there is no exactitude in our observations, since the measurement of the same line seems to vary upon each measurement. The more precise your observation, the more certain they will be to show irregular departures from the law, he observes, from his experience working as a scientist in a laboratory. The above are theoretical in principle arguments. We do observe many events that seem to be driven by chance, but perhaps chance is downplayed not because it does not exist, but because it is just not seen as a respectable argument. Peirce gives an example of how scientists regard the molecules of gases to move randomly. The temperature of a gas is, by the kinetic theory of gases, due to the speed of the motion of the molecules. Just from sheer probability alone, the random movements of the gas molecules make it possible for them to occasionally have concentrations of heat, such that it can lead to an explosion. Yet when an explosion does occur, no expert or even layperson will resort to such an explanation of chance. Hence, Peirce believes he has convincingly argued against exactitude and universalism in the laws of science. He now examines some counter-arguments. One is that the exact regularity of nature is a priori true. There is no reason to believe this since we have seen empirical evidence to the contrary, where the objects of nature are never found to be quite perfect and exact or even regular. Just think of flowers or fruits. Have you ever seen a perfect one? Another argument is that we are unable to conceive of chance having such a role. Peirce retorts, that which has been inconceivable today has often turned out indisputable on the morrow. Inability to conceive is only a stage through which every man must pass. An important argument is how chance is unintelligible. Chance is not a proper reason since it does not render the phenomenon intelligible. It does not help explain the phenomenon and is thus not a true cause. Peirce holds that the outcome of a throw of the dice is by chance along with the diversity of events in the world. While regularity can be observed, diversity and irregularity can likewise be observed, especially in games of chance such as dice. However, is chance as an explanation merely a byword for ignorance? A materialist may argue that the seemingly random outcomes of the dice are in fact dictated by mechanical laws. Peirce counters that it is not these laws that make a particular outcome, since the same laws also apply in any other outcome. Nonetheless, there is a diversity of outcome which arises not because of the laws which always applies, but because of the unknown factors such as the way the dice is thrown. A materialistic determinist will argue that the way the dice is thrown is decided by previous events, all traceable in principle back to the starting conditions of the universe. And here is where Peirce objects. You think all the arbitrary specifications of the universe were introduced in one dose, in the beginning. But I, for my part, think that the diversification has been continually taking place. There is no reason, according to Peirce, to think that the only chance condition was at the beginning of time, after which all has to continue in a determined way. He notes that growth and increasing complexity is everywhere observed, suggesting an agency by which the complexity and diversity of things can be increased, rather than a mechanical necessity. Such growth is found in living things. He believes that there are frequent small departures from law and less frequent large departures, which is why there is such a variety of objects in existence, some of which are unique and novel, which cannot be accounted for by mechanical laws. Variety can spring only from spontaneity, he writes. A determinist may allege that chance as a hypothesis does not explain any phenomena. Peirce argues the contrary, that chance can explain the variety in nature of growth and developing complexity which mechanism is unable to explain. He has already explained the former on variety and chance. As for the latter, that growth and complexity cannot be explained by mechanical laws, I think one way to understand this is how mechanical laws fail to explain the leaps of emergent phenomena. Higher order phenomena cannot be reduced to lower level ones. For instance, the way atoms are organized cannot explain how some objects have life. Knowing the atomic structure of a cell, even if you arrange atoms of the elements accordingly, it still does not have life. Mechanism is unable to bridge these kinds of gaps in emergent phenomena. Another strategy by the determinists is that the laws of nature are brute facts of which no further account can be given. Peirce believes that such a move is illegitimate since regularity is what requires explanation as compared to disorder. Besides, the laws can in fact be explained, this explanation being chance, an account of which he proposed in the first Monist paper, where from pure chaos comes biases which become habits, some of which is favoured by evolution to survive, leading to the regularity we observe today. However, Peirce admits that to undertake to account for anything by saying boldly that it is due to chance would indeed be futile. However, that is not what he is doing. Instead, he makes use of chance chiefly to make room for a principle of generalization, or tendency to form habits, which I hold has produced all regularities. Peirce then raises the hard problem of consciousness. For the materialist, the mind is also a physical substance. Hence, intangibles such as qualia and feelings are explained by the materialist to be epiphenomena. However, if feelings are not considered just an epiphenomena of a physical substance, but as something immaterial, then the state of feeling at any instance need not causally affect subsequent states of feelings. Besides, by supposing the rigid exactitude of causation to yield, I cannot how little, be it but a strictly infinitesimal amount, we gain room to insert mind into our scheme, notes Peirce. So long as some small amount of randomness is permitted to exist in the laws of nature, free will can then be postulated. As an aside, complete randomness is not free will. In fact, the opposite, since if things are totally random, then there is no choice that can be made by a free will. On the flip side, if everything was determined, then there is no free will either. However, freedom requires that not everything is determined, and hence needs the introduction of some chance, some uncertainty into our mental processes. In conclusion, Peirce has cast doubt on the exactitude of the laws of nature, and in that way, also on the thesis of determinism. Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.